Okay, so I think we'll get started. So I'm delighted to see so many people joining our call, and I hope that if you weren't able to join our sessions back in November, that you at least were able to go out to the site that Darcy created for us on Red Cape Revolution and either review the session that we had that was on video, or also just look at some of the resources that she provided. I know as I reflect on both of those sessions that we had in November, one of the actions that I took away was, and I don't see Daphne on, but I'm going to put her on the spot. Um, so while I was kind of going through my meetings, one of the takeaways that I had was looking through, and as people say, how was your day? And a way to build your network was, instead of just saying, oh, fine, how was yours? Just share something that you've been working on. So I tried that with multiple people, but Daphne in particular. I shared about some of the work that I was doing on portfolio and something I was proud of. And I found out about Daphne's move to the US, and we kind of bonded on some of the US, customs that she would be working through as she moved over here. So it was just a great way to build your network and just find out something that you wouldn't normally have found out about somebody as you're getting through your day. So I hope others have found some actions as they've gone through the November session too. And I'd love to hear those even in this session as we go. So we did take your questions, and I appreciate everyone who sent in some questions. And we've reflected on the feedback as well. So in this session, you are able to speak freely. We'll put you on mute if you need to be on mute if we find that there's background noise, but feel free to speak out. And this is going to be a conversation session rather than a presentation. So please feel free to join in and share your input as well. And then we will have a session in January if anyone's interested in kind of looking through how we could plan to carry these ideas that we've moved forward in actions, move forward in the year to come, and look at the strategy for our women's network. I invite you to reach out to me, and we can work through a strategy planning meeting that we're going to be having in January. So with that, it's my pleasure to turn things over to our coach, Darcy Eikenberg from Red Cape Revolution. And I'm really hope everyone will join me in welcoming her back here. So thanks, Darcy, for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to see your faces and hopefully, hear some of your voices and just get a chance to be here with you today. It seems, I don't know, like yesterday that we just were talking about communicating your value in November. Katie and I were talking earlier. The beginning of the year went so slow, and the end of the year now seems to be on an accelerator. So it's kind of amazing that we're here in December, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to chat with you here today and take some of the questions that came out of the sessions that we did earlier and some of the ones you sent in. And as Katie said, this is conversation, not presentation. I don't have any slides. It's going to be faces and conversation. But one of the things that we wanted to do, we know that so many of us just haven't had a chance to, to connect with each other or meet somebody new. So before I dive into some of the questions that you guys asked and we'll answer and discuss, we're going to move into just a very small breakout group, and for a very short period of time, just 5 minutes. But let me tell you what we're going to do in that breakout group. So for you, those of you who are like, oh my gosh, I don't like to have small talk. No, as Katie was talking about the little exercise that she tried, we're going to try to make it those 5 minutes into a little bit more big talk, way to be able to connect with somebody. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't. The groups are going to be totally random, but here's what we're going to do. In a few minutes, you're going to go into a group of 4, and Deb's going to, on my team, randomly, magically make that happen on the back end. So you don't have to do a thing. You don't have to touch anything. You don't have to do anything. If you're not yet on camera and you have the opportunity to be, that would be great. But if not, just make sure your audio is on for the breakout group. And then in that group, I'm going to give you the specific topic. you'll also have a topic. It'll come in a little message, but if you want to make a note right now, just so maybe you start thinking about it, that would be great. So here's what I'm going to ask you in your breakout room to talk about. So first, I want you, obviously, introduce yourself. If your name's not clear on your little Zoom link, introduce yourself. Tell your group where you are, where you are in the world right now. And then I want you to share with your group one thing you're proud of contributing in your role at Mondelez in 2020. One thing you're proud of contributing in your role in 2020. Now, remember, as we talked about in the bigger communicating your value session, this doesn't have to be any big major thing. It doesn't have to be anything anybody wrote you a bonus check for, or put on your performance review, or anything maybe even that anybody necessarily would have noticed. But I want you to pick something that you're proud of. Maybe it was how you interacted with a teammate who was under great stress. Maybe it was how you managed your own stress, or adjusting to a remote life if that was new to you. Maybe it was one project or an idea or something. There's no right and wrong. There's no judgment. Let's all promise each other this is a no judgment zone. This is a lift each other up zone. And here's some of the stories for the things that we're proud of, that we're excited by, that are successes. Because I don't know about you, but so often at this time of year, I get really caught in what are all the things that I didn't do? What are all the things that haven't gotten done? What's all left to be done? So I'm going to invite you to take just that 5 minutes with your group and share one thing you're proud of contributing in your role in 2020. Okay, so remember, name, location, and that one thing. Now, when you're in your group, somebody can just dive in and go first, but if everybody's looking at each other and no one knows who to go first, the person whose name starts earlier in the alphabet, you're named, okay? So if the Annas and Anitas and Astrids, you may be the ones in your group that have to get the ball rolling, okay? I'm gonna count on you, A's and B's and C's. So, all right, everybody know what we're doing? Everybody got the question? It's gonna go fast, I promise you. And remember, while we're recording this, your breakout groups are not recorded. So whatever you're proud of, that's just between you and your little group. Okay. Deb, you ready? We're going to go into the 5-minute breakout groups, and then you're going to come back here. We'll chat a little about anything that came up in the groups, and then we'll dive into questions. Okay. All right. We'll see you in 5. So tell us. So how was your breakout group? If you're on mute, you can put it in the chat. But if you can come off mute if you want. Anybody hear something they were excited by in their breakout group? Give us the rate. Did you hear something good?
This is Monica. I talked to Sabrina Hinkie, and she's in Brazil, and she works for travel. And it was very interesting because she was talking about how they had to, think about that, working for travel and the challenge they have this year. And it was very interesting. And she was proud of the work that they've done, trying to figure out how to work in this fun environment we have right now. So it was very interesting, very interesting experience.
Yeah, thanks, Monica. Anybody else have something that they heard that just really sparked them, or something that they heard themselves sharing that, they said, wow, I didn't even realize that was something I was proud of?
Well, thank you, Monica. Here is Sabrina speaking. And I spoke with Monica. She's based in Illinois, near of our Chicago office. And she's program manager. It was interesting to know that she's proud how she managed the impacts of the projects, of the many projects that was put on hold, considering the current situation, right? And how it was major minimal impact to the users. And we discussed how we see in the Mondelez environment, how we support each other, not only in regards of projects impacts, but also in regards of feelings, how we speak with each other. So it was amazing to see that she achieved his goals, same in this situation.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's great. I mean, this is a little exercise for those of you who lead teams that you can actually do with your team, especially at a time where people are feeling overwhelmed or feeling like they, um, that the list of things in front of them that's still to do, or the things that are broken, or the things they're being asked to do just feel heavy. To be able to just we just did 5 minutes, right? To have everybody just do 30 seconds on something that they're proud of, or just do it like one-to-one, just to two people, one, do either like breakout groups like we did, or just a quick, you got 30 seconds, one thing you're proud of, go pop up and do that. Because we don't often see the work that's underneath the work that we notice as success. A lot of our projects are long and drawn out. So yes, so being able to pull these kind of things out and to hear from each other. And it's fun to hear what each other is excited about and proud of. So good for you guys. I'm glad thank you for sharing. Hope you got something out of your group, or maybe saw somebody that you haven't seen for a while, or met somebody that you want to, after this, go get in more touch with, send them an email, send them LinkedIn, and just say, hey, I heard your story, love to talk to you more. That's a great way to leverage just even being part of this conversation. And I think, so Sabrina also gave me the great hook for one of the questions that came up. So we'll dive into some of the questions. But again, as we go along, if you have a comment, you have a story, flail madly, then, Deb will cue me and we can make sure that you're off mute, or say, hey, Darcy, and jump in. Or again, you can use the chat if you're someplace that's noisy, or the dog's barking, or whatever things might be happening. But, Sabrina mentioned the word emotion. And in the questions you all sent, this hit a hot button, right? So just to remind you, in the talk that we had back in November, no matter which one you attended, one of the things I shared with you about communicating your value is about mastering the art of bragging. And of course, as you learned, it's not bragging in a way of saying, I'm better than everybody else, but it's really kind of what we just did, that finding the pride points and being able to pull out those success stories. And Katie shared that at the beginning of today's conversation too, that, she experimented with that a little. I'm so excited to hear that instead of just, how are you? Fine. How are you? Fine. It's, how are you? Great. We're working on this next project and it's going well, or we're working on this next project and, here's where we're having challenges. But at least doing that and starting a conversation. And now she has a new connection with with someone that's a little deeper than might have been on the surface. And that other person now knows more things that Katie's working on. So, but one of the things about sharing those pride points is that I offer to you that emotion puts us in motion. So that prompted, and I've got my cheat sheets here. So there's a couple different questions that came in on that. One of them might be yours. One of them you might have thought about but didn't submit. So here's one. I was always taught that as a woman, I shouldn't show emotion at work or it'd get in my way of being respected. Can you talk more about using emotion at work? And here's another one that's kind of related, and I'll answer them both and we can talk some more about that. How do you strike a balance bringing emotions to work? It's challenging for me as I've been trained not to bring emotions to work, as we women used to get criticized on being emotional. Nowadays, people might not verbalize it, but they still think it, and they think women are emotional in a bad way. Men might are given praise that they're sensitive, and women might get criticized for being too emotional or even too aggressive. So, so let's talk about the idea of emotion. First of all, anybody else? I'm going to admit Sylvie. Oh yeah, you got her, Deb. Thanks. Anybody else struggle with this? Any other comments you want to make about this idea of emotion at work before I kind of dive in and share some of my thoughts on this? Okay, I just wanted
to give one example. So a couple of weeks back, I was having quite a difficult time with a lot of work coming in, and I knew my year-end review was approaching. So I kind of, maybe it had a negative impact on myself, but I withheld talking about that overwhelming, stressful feeling because I knew my year-end review was approaching, and I didn't want that to have an impact on my rating or how they would see me next year in terms of moving into a different role or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and Sarah, you actually did use the smart use of what's called or being aware of the recency bias, which is that as humans, we do make judgments based on things that have just more recently happened. So whether you recognize you were doing that or not, I think it was probably a smart move, and on two fronts, and so as we talk about emotion, there really is no good or bad emotion. I think we've sometimes been trained that when we talk about emotion in the workplace, we're really actually talking about what we might categorize as negative emotion: anger, fear, crying, upset. And those are sometimes things, especially the upset, crying, frustration, that women especially, and it's broad stereotype, but are told, well, don't do that, don't have that happen. But the truth is that emotion is always it's like a stop sign in our bodies that says something else is going on here. For women, I find it very often that what's happening is there is some level of frustration. Either there's a value that I hold that's getting pushed on, that's getting offended or run over, or there's in Sarah, in the case of like being overwhelmed, which happens to all of us, it could be that feeling of like, I want to be doing the best job and I just can't, I have too much going on right now, but frustration can often, when we tamp it down, when we say we shouldn't have it, we shouldn't show it, we shouldn't express it, can often come out in things like tears. For men, it happens too, but it tends to happen in anger. Men tend to be able to show the anger. And yes, there are some sociological aspects where a guy getting angry about something that's not done is more acceptable than even a woman showing the same kind of emotion. But we can't change hundreds of years of how society is, except within ourselves, and recognizing that for our teams, if we're observing someone who has an emotion that we're maybe labeling as a negative emotion, that as leaders, we can ask, what else could this mean? What else is going on here? And then when it's our emotion, we can do the same thing. And so if you are feeling like an emotion is coming to the surface, that may be the time where you say, you know what, I need to step aside. I need a little time. You need to figure out what that really means. Because when you take the beat and you figure out what it really means, you're able to then craft a different conversation around it. So, I've had clients who they've just felt like they're talked over in meetings all the time. Maybe some of you have had this happen too. But getting frustrated in a meeting and saying, shut up and let me talk already, isn't always necessarily the most productive way to get your point across. But recognizing, okay, what was really going on? Okay, it's really my frustration. how do I have conversations with the different people, maybe separately in that meeting, or the leader of that meeting, and actually be very honest and say, I have to tell you, Bob, here's what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that, every time we're talking about my department in the meeting, I don't get the opportunity to speak. And honestly, that's very frustrating to me. Can you and I work together to be able to figure out how I can have my voice heard at the table? Or is there feedback as to why my voice isn't getting represented at the table? So knowing your frustration, knowing your emotion, as opposed to telling yourself what many of us have been taught, that, oh, there's no room for emotion. Well, everything is emotion. The world, is driven on emotion. And we just tend to try to ignore any of our feelings that are unpleasant emotions. But actually, if we don't pay attention to those, they're trying to tell us something. And we need to be listening to those in the same way that the positive, the emotions that we love, the fact that we had a great conversation with somebody, or someone said something that made us feel good, pursuing those emotions, knowing that, hey, when I just did that thing, that made me feel great. And I want more of that. All of those emotions, the way we feel, are all clues as to how to keep ourselves happier, healthier, more productive. So I would challenge you for us to stop thinking the old stereotype is there's no room for emotion at work. Work is personal, and the personal, it's all emotional. So I'm going to stop there and open up for any questions or comments or pushback or clarifications on that topic, because I know it was something that came up a lot out of the conversation we had earlier. Thoughts, stories, experiences?
Oh, I think you have
Yeah, Darcy, thank you. So the second question was mine. So I've been trained so many years, like beating emotion out of me. So thank you for clarifying it. And one thing when you said, it kind of sparks me to think about a little bit too, is that, how you talked about women often got kind of like talked over, right? So our voices was not heard. So Obama, who was really famous supporting women, his top advisors were so frustrated the first term when the women brought up issues and the men just took credit. Like, Obama gave the men credit for those great ideas. So those women formed this thing called echoing effect. So basically, let's say Katie said something, right? And among the meeting, and people just talked over, Q is going to bring it up as Katie said, da, 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 da. So they kind of continue echoing. All these women supported each other. It was a very effective way to make critical mass, saying is, hey, we are here, we're loud, and these are the great ideas, and take it and listen to us. So that was really effective. So what I want to say here is, for us, all of us, there are times we're in the same meeting, right? Let's help each other. Let's, if it's a good idea, obviously. Let's help sisterhood. And also another thing, recently, my consulting friends, were in this women group, and they were saying is, turn your camera on when there's meetings. You'll see a lot of men will turn their cameras on. And this is how women get a seat at the table. This is like a virtual meetings that women get a seat at the table. It is totally okay, like right now, right? So it's kind of like sisterhood, it's fine, but just be mindful when you go to those important meetings, have a seat at the table. This is, also, like I've gone to meetings in the past, I always take a little small seat. No, nowadays I don't. I take, what's wrong for me to take a center seat? There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So that's just a couple comments.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And the strategy that you were talking about, I think of that as amplification. And we all need people to be our amplifiers, right? I mean, whether that's in a meeting, to be able to repeat someone's name, Q makes a lot of sense when she said this, or even online, even if someone is sharing something, to comment on it, to, amplify it, to share it further. There are so many psychological biases about how we view people that, and bias has a bad word, right? We think, well, we need to eliminate all biases. Truth is, our brain is naturally biased because it's a protection mechanism. The brain is trying to help us process the trillions of pieces of data that are coming in every minute in our lives. And that's really what a bias is. It doesn't make it right. It just makes us, as people who want to be operating at our best and highest in the world, aware that others are likely going to be biased in some way. And it may be that if they just don't hear our name, they're just not going to remember us, or they don't see us more often. Or like Sarah shared, if all they heard right before they had to submit the review was something that was troublesome, as opposed to the whole year of things that were awesome sauce. This is the human condition. We do this ourselves too. We're not immune to it ourselves. But yes, amplifying others, and even making, I'll call it a deal. I don't mean it in an underhanded way. But if there are a group of women who are your peers, or that you're traveling, through projects with, to be able to say, hey, here's something I'm working on for myself. Here's actually something I notice, and I'd love your help on that. And here's what that help could look like. I would love your support of when this happens, if you could do that. And what can I do for you? So being more specific to ask each other, of the help that you need, and not assuming. Someone said to me the other day, that, well, don't you think people know that people want encouragement, and that people want like to have an attaboy, attagirl? I said, no. Sometimes people are afraid they're going to do that, and it's going to make someone feel uncomfortable. And for some of you, it might. So it's really gets to, if you want more recognition, if you want the voice at the table, at the meeting, to be more direct, to ask for it, to be more specific. And again, not in a, 3-year-old stomping their feet on the ground way, but in a, here's what I observe, or here's what I'm working on, and I would love to have your support on this. Here's the thing that I would really love if you'd be willing to do for me. And most of the time, if we ask somebody, and then we also say, and what can I do for you? They're going to say, sure, that's no skin off my teeth. Yeah, absolutely. But it's just raising our consciousness about the importance of it, as opposed to feeling frustrated or feeling upset that, no one ever says good idea to me, or no one, I stayed up all night to finish that thing and no one said thank you. It's like, if you need it, ask for it and let people know what you need. Okay. Other questions on emotion? As I said to Katie earlier, we could probably talk the whole time about emotion, but there are some other categories of questions that came in that I want to make sure we touch on. Any other before we move on? Just going once, going twice. Okay. So the next set of questions that came up were about communicating value in a remote world. So incredibly relevant to our lives, right? And I think to our future as well. So one question, in a remote world, what do you think is the biggest struggle when it comes to communicating value, and what's your advice on how to overcome this? Another related question that I think is related, maybe the person didn't quite put it in this category, but if you have a manager who is all about the task, how do you use tools to influence him or her so they appreciate your value too? So I put that in the remote category because one of the things I think we forget is that screens screen out energy. That our meetings that we've now moved to tools like this or to Teams are not the same as they actually were in person. And so if there is something that you are trying to communicate to your team, to your leaders, if there is a behavior you're trying to demonstrate, I think it echoes a little bit of what I said before. We have to be more deliberate. We may have to make ourselves truly more present. Maybe we have to actually pump up the energy a little bit more. We have to be conscious about how am I showing up? If someone is only experiencing me online, am I showing up? Is my camera on? Or if I don't want to be on camera all the time, which is absolutely fine because there's plenty of opportunities where it can be draining, but am I connecting with people individually? And a manager who is all about task, being able to meet that person where they are and translate how that task means something bigger. So instead of just following their checklist, that, well, okay, this got done and this got done and this got done. Finishing the thought, this got done, which means that this other thing you care about is on track, or this got done, which you'll remember we struggled with back in April. And so telling more of the story without like going on for days, but connecting the dots for people. And again, a lot of this comes back to just being more intentional. That if hey, I want to be seen as the go-to person for this kind of problem or that kind of problem. Lifting yourself out of it's just about the task to connect it to the bigger result. And I think we did the who and what statement in the presentation. So that's something else to go back and look at if you want. That it's not just, I'm an IT expert in the XYZ department. It's, I troubleshoot the systems so that our customers get what they need. What's that bigger thing that what you do makes happen? So in a remote world, I think obviously, the biggest struggle is that we don't have the benefit of the same kind of informal information, the walking through the hallways or the, just kind of experiencing each other that we normally do. We have to go seek that out more intentionally. That's also why having a group like this or picking, somebody on the screen who's a stranger to you and saying, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to follow up with that person just because I want to learn more about who she is and what she's doing. That has maybe no direct connection to me, but just expands my horizons, allows me to have somebody new who I can learn from so that I can connect the dots of what I do to something that's bigger. And in the remote world, we just have to be present to doing that more directly, more specifically, and finding ways to connect and not just connect, just show up on the screen, but actually participate, to be engaged, to be heard, to ask the questions, to name names, it's similar to what we're talking about before. So other thoughts or questions about communicating your value in a remote world, when people aren't necessarily seeing every meeting that you're in or seeing you, run down the hallways or grabbing lunch or in the elevators. Other questions that come out on that?
Don't have the communicating the value remote, but communicating the value when the company is on hiring freeze, promotion freeze. Like what is a special, sweet spot, right? Because sooner or later that's going to be going away, but then how do you get in front of the line per se?
So every job is a problem to be solved. And so find the pain that you solve, find the problem that you solve. It is easy for a company to say we're in a hiring freeze or in a promotion freeze. But when you are looking at your area of expertise and you are finding the pain and you are saying, you know what? I could solve this pain, or here's my ideas about taking this problem to the next level, relieving this problem more. That's something I'm interested in. It would be great for my, for my career and great for the company or the customer or what have you. And I believe that that's a promoted level, that work is worth a higher amount of money. But connecting the problems, being clear about the problem and the pain, because people don't usually promote somebody just because they're a nice person. I mean, there are sometimes in especially large organizations like yours where it's like after a few years and just to balance everything out, people might get promoted. But if there's something that you want to move toward, be making sure that you are getting clear about what is the so what on that, what is the problem, and then in those modes to have the conversations to say when I am willing to take on that problem, and I believe that it should be a level X, or I believe it should be the title of senior director, or in order to solve that problem, here's the team that I will need, or here's the additional resource that I will need. But when you're putting it in those bigger perspectives, you're more likely to have someone say, yes, we agree that's a problem. Yeah, oh, absolutely. That's pain we've been trying to solve. And it makes it a faster path to you getting the promotion, the raise, the whatever the acknowledgement, that you're looking for. It's almost thinking about it entrepreneurially. And for those of you who have friends and family who are actually looking for jobs, you might give them that little tidbit of every job is a problem to be solved, is pain to be solved. People are not hiring people right now just because of I'm flooding my resume into the big black hole. They're hiring it because someone shows up and says, hey, I see you have that problem. Or here's this opportunity of this place you are going to grow. I'm somebody who knows how to do that. I'm somebody who has experience doing that. Find the problems and you're always going to have job security. So I hope that's useful. Let's do one other question and then we're going to go to another breakout room. So,
This would be good.
Here's a question about, so many of you, and I don't know if all of you on the call, are talking about being more of an introvert, or perhaps you're a non-native speaker. And so here's just a sample of the question. So, I'm more of an introvert and English is not my native language. I don't feel very confident when I have to share my ideas or questions in this language, even if I'm aware that they're good. I know that it's important for my development to be heard and be part of the conversation, but I only do that if someone asks me something or invites me to participate, or if I think there's a missing point. So how can I get heard even though I'm not comfortable showing off and I don't want to be invisible in meetings? So I've paraphrased a little bit there, but so here is one of the things lately in the past couple of years, it's become almost trendy for us to refer to ourselves as introverts. And the truth is that introversion and extroversion are only about how we get our energy. So it may surprise you that I'm actually lean more toward the introverted side. Like, in order to get my energy to show up with all you like this, I have to have my quiet time on my own, my think time, my planning time. I can't be in a big group of people 24/7 and show up and do my best. I know myself well enough to know I've got to have some of that time. Now, so some folks, they need people, they have to always feed off the energy of people. So I think we misinterpret introvert meaning like, I don't like to talk, or I don't like people. Truth is, true introverts are actually great with people because they're good listeners. They're, they're somebody who may, because they're getting energy from a smaller group, might be more focused. And so I always caution us, especially if you're a non-native English speaker working in a primarily English speaking culture, to not put yourself in a box of I'm this, so that makes it a lot harder for me. I mean, if the fact is that it's hard for me to speak up in a meeting, that's the problem to solve, not I'm an introvert. But it's like, okay, if I want to speak up in a meeting, what is the help I need to ask for? What are the tools that I might need? What's the practice that I might just need to have to get the experience with it? Why do I want to speak up? Do I want to speak up because I think it's leading me to something else? And is speaking up actually the way to get what I want? So I always caution people to not put the labels on themselves of I'm an introvert or I'm not. I fully understand, and I am not the expert on if you're a non-native speaker, and you're adapting into a fully US or fully English speaking type of environment. But my guess is there's somebody else on this team who has done that or who's had that experience. Ask people to seek them out. Identifying the thing you want to work on, getting really clear on that can be so helpful, because to say, I recognize that, culturally, the way I was raised or the way I came up in the company had this set of expectations. But now, as I'm growing my leadership, there's this different set of expectations. I see how you've grown. Can you share with me some of the things that you've learned? People are more willing to help you and share their stories and their experiences than you think. But when we put the labels on ourselves, when we kind of burden ourselves with, well, I'm a this, and so that means I can't do something else, all that does is pull us back and hold us back. So that might not be a fully direct answer to that question, but I just wanted to challenge us as we're, any of us are thinking about, I'm an introvert, or I'm a non-native speaker, or I'm new to the company, or I'm old in the company, that those labels are not helping us. And matter of fact, many times those labels are often holding us back. And they're the labels we put on ourselves, as opposed to labels that we may be making an assumption that other people are saying to us. So I want to just take a second. We've just got a few minutes left, and I'd like to do one more breakout group before we go away. So other questions, comments before we go to the last breakout group? It's okay if not. Okay, so here's where we're going to do another breakout group. Okay, again, just super fast, 5 minutes. Again, it should be different than what it was before. So if you don't know everybody in the group, name and location, please, just so we get a sense of who people are. And here's the question or the comment I want you to share with your group. One strategy that I personally want to work on to communicate my value more in 2021 is. So one strategy I want to work on to communicate my value more in 2021. So where are you going from here? What's the one strategy out of, maybe it's something we talked about today, maybe it's something we talked about in November, maybe it's just something else that's coming to you that you want to focus on and work on in 2021. Again, totally confidential, just between your group. There's no right or wrong. So Deb, are we ready to go back into 5-minute breakout groups? Okay, all right, stay with us and then we'll come back together one more time really quickly to say goodbye at the end, but let's go to your breakout groups now. As people are coming back in, any comments, questions, things before we sign off?
I just want to thanks because this time I really appreciate all the tips and everything, and I really enjoy the sessions. And
Good. Well, thank you. I so enjoy being with you and hearing the real life stories and, and putting these, putting these ideas into play. And, someone had asked, like, how do I get started? And, and I think the secret to starting is to either pick the one thing, like, just like you shared with your group, the one thing that you want to work on more, and break it down into what's the first rock, what's the first step to just put my foot on something small. Is it in that next conversation, I'm not just going to do chit chat, I'm going to actually say, yeah, I'm great. We're just turning in the budget for 2021 and I'm really excited about what's ahead. What are those little things? Because the little things all add up to mean a lot. So, so to not get intimidated by, how do I get to the place I want to be, but taking one little step, asking for help, getting really specific about, who else can support me on this journey. So other questions as everybody else comes back before we hit the top of the hour? Okay, we will have this recording on the page where the original workshop is. And Katie, I'm going to hand it back to you just to wrap us up.
Thank you so much. And Darcy, this is just another session that I'm so grateful that we really have these actionable steps to really help us to get that confidence to move forward. So I hope everybody did take down at least one actionable step that you can take forward. And in 2021, as part of our Women's Network, we'll definitely be looking forward to getting together and sharing our experiences so we can build off one another as well and really help each other to rise above. So we will have another session in January. If anyone's interested in joining our team to really look at, what are some strategies that we'd like to take to move our women's network forward in 21 and what we want to focus on, please feel free to reach out. We'll be having one more session with Darcy for that group that wants to kind of work on planning this to move forward. So again, thank you so much for your participation. I know I've learned a lot from all of you as well as Darcy during this session. So I appreciate you sharing your experiences. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy
Katie.
holidays,
Thanks, Darcy.
everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.